Hello, my name is Georgia Kicklighter, and I am the Director of Business Development here at Destination America. As most of you know, Destination America is a full service DMC specializing in group travel through North and South America, from the tip of Alaska to the tip of Chile and everything in between. It is my great pleasure today to be sharing with you the islands of Hawaii, specifically the Big Island, and to introduce to you Graham Bendelow, who, as well as being our Vice President of Contracting, is also a Travel Experience Director for the islands of Hawaii. What makes Destination America such a unique travel supplier is that we have invested a lot of our time and manpower into developing custom experiences that your guests cannot do on their own and they cannot get at other suppliers. So we want to set you apart from the competition, and that is what we specialize in. Today, Graham is going to walk you through some of the wonderful experiences and what makes the island of Hawaii so special. And of course, if you fall in love with Hawaii just like we have, please reach out to us for a quote. You can reach out to myself. That's georgia.kicklighter@destamer.com, or you can reach out to Joyce Chow, our account executive for the Asia market, if you are looking for a quote for this destination or any of the destinations that we do offer in North or South America. With that, thank you again, and I'd love to turn it over to Graham, who's going to tell you all about some of the wonderful experiences that you and your guests will have on the islands of Hawaii. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. So, aloha, everybody, and welcome to our overview of the Hawaiian Islands. My name's Graham Bendelow, and I am the Travel Experiences Developer here at Destination America for the state of Hawaii. So, I wanted to give you just a brief overview of the islands of Hawaii. As you can see from the map, Hawaii is a chain of islands, and in fact, these islands have been formed over the years through volcanic activity. So as the tectonic plates in the Pacific have moved, each island has been created through volcanic activity. Each of the islands has a very different feel and a very different face, and there's not going to be time in the presentation today to get into all of them, but we're going to start with the Big Island of Hawaii. All right, so the Big Island of Hawaii. It's named that way simply because it is the Big Island of Hawaii. It's the largest of the Hawaiian Islands. And in fact, if you were to take all of the other islands and put them together, the Big Island is a larger landmass than all of the other islands combined. It's also the youngest of the islands. So I mentioned that the state of Hawaii has been formed over the years through that volcanic activity. This is the last of the islands to be formed. And in fact, there are still active volcanoes on the Big Island, and it's getting bigger every day. It's growing every day. All right, so let's get started. And let's start with the basics. How do you get to the Big Island? So there are two airports on the Big Island, and you can see those on the map here. We have Hilo and we have Kona, and they're on opposite sides of the island, as you can see. There are direct flights to both of these airports from the US mainland, so from LA, San Francisco, Vegas, Phoenix, making it a perfect addition to a stop on the mainland. There's also connecting islands, of course, from all of the Hawaiian Islands. And there are direct flights into the Big Island from Tokyo, and also direct flights from Seoul into Hawaii. Getting into Hawaii itself directly from Asia, in 2019, there were around 600,000 seats coming into Hawaii from Asia, and about 3.3 million seats coming into the islands from all destinations. All right, so we've arrived, we've made it to the Big Island. Let's explore a little. And let's start in Hilo. I mentioned that's where one of the airports is located. Hilo is an interesting area. It's a part of the island that is absolutely beautiful, and yet many tourists simply don't spend very much time there. To me, Hilo is kind of the true Hawaii. This is the Hawaii of the people who live in the islands. There is a wonderful farmers market that happens in Hilo, and if you happen to be there when that's going on, it's a great place to find some unique produce, some great coffee from the island, and just pick up some staples to help you on your journey. It's also home to Liliuokalani Gardens, and we'll get into those in a little while here. And it's also a great stopping off point for Wailuku State Park, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second here too. So, Liliuokalani Gardens. These gardens are right in the heart of Hilo. So a great place to start your exploration of Hilo and the wider area. They're ornamental gardens, as you can see from the image here, and they're the largest ornamental Japanese garden outside of Japan. The gardens were built and dedicated back in 1917, and they were dedicated to the Japanese immigrants who were workers in Hawaii, and particularly on the Big Island, and they were working in the sugar industry, which was a huge part of Hawaii's past. Um, Great park to visit. There are koi ponds, bridges, and pagodas. Lots of areas for you just to relax and enjoy the gardens, or enjoy a lunch that perhaps you picked up at the farmer's market. And what's also so great about these gardens, there is no admission fee. So as you're putting together an itinerary or an experience for your customers and your guests coming into the islands, this is a great way to give them a really nice experience, and it doesn't add cost. So we're going to want to get out and explore a little bit, of course. And a great place to begin is at Kaka Falls State Park. So this is just north of Hilo along the coast, and it's home to probably the most famous waterfall on Hawaii, which stands at 442 feet high. That's about 135 meters. You access the falls along a short half-mile or so hike, and that hike is going to take you through beautiful lush rainforest, which is full of wild orchids and ferns. And as you've completed that hike, you arrive at the falls and you see what you see on the screen here. Those orchids that I mentioned are an important part of the story of this part of Hawaii. And each of the islands has a name. So typically the Big Island goes by the Big Island. But it's also known as the Orchid Isle. And how it got that name, story goes, is that back in the day there was a pilot for Hawaiian Airlines, a gentleman by the name of Johnny Teft, and he used to fly out of Hilo on a regular basis. He was an avid gardener, and he was very, very much into orchids. That was his passion, and he loved to grow orchids. Well, story tells that as he would take off from the Hilo airport and fly over this stretch of the coast, he would crack open the ventilation window that the aircraft had back then, and he would throw out a handful of orchid seeds just as he was making that turn out of Hilo. And because of that, orchids became native and wild in this area, and are still there to this day. Great story. Okay, so more things to do from Hilo, and this is only 2 miles from the center of Hilo, very, very close, on the way out towards Volcano National Park. And this is Wailuku State Park, home to Rainbow Falls, very popular waterfalls. The best time to arrive here is around 10 o'clock in the morning. And the reason for that is that as the water is coming off the falls, it creates a mist, similar to what you will have seen from other waterfalls. But the angle of the sun at around 10 a.m. each day will create the illusion of rainbows over the falls. Can happen at other times of the day, but the best time to see that is around 10. So good to build your guest experience to take advantage of that. And another really unique thing to be seen at Wailuku State Park, as that water has come down the falls, it bubbles through volcanic rock, and it gives the appearance of the water boiling. And so the area just immediately below the falls is known as the boiling pots, series of terraced pools, and the water bubbles up from under the ground and gives the illusion of the water boiling. Great experience. Okay, so Volcanoes National Park, probably the most famous attraction on the Big Island. It's around a 45-minute drive from Hilo, and that's heading across the island towards Kona. Recognized as having the most active volcanoes in the US. Covers a huge amount of ground. It's around 523 square miles and getting bigger. So as that volcanic activity continues to happen, the new land is being formed and the national park is getting larger. Two volcanoes inside of the park. One is Mauna Loa. Mauna Loa last erupted back in 1984, and the other is Kilauea, which erupted much more recently, last erupted back in 2018. At its peak of volcanic activity and active lava flow, there was enough lava being produced every day to create 20 miles of new two-lane highway. A question that is asked a lot is, will you see lava flowing when you visit Volcano National Park? And the answer is maybe. It depends on the volcanic activity at the time. That information is published on the National Park website, but regardless of whether the lava is actually flowing, there is plenty of activity and lots to see. So I mentioned that Volcano National Park is huge, 523 square miles. And within that area, there's around 150 miles of hiking trails. Volcano National Park has been recognized as a UNESCO World Biosphere Site and also a World Heritage Site. And what that means is that you're going to have lots of different types of terrain that you can explore on a hike here. And I think you can see some of that from these images. So there are rainforests within Volcano National Park. There are active volcanic areas where you're going to walk through the steam that's coming from the volcano. You can also walk through lava tubes inside of the park. And of course, you can hike across some of the volcanic areas and the craters. Another great way to see the park, however, is from the air. And helicopter flights do operate over Hawaii Volcano National Park. You can do that from either Hilo or from Kona, and you fly directly above the crater and over that 523 square mile area of the national park. Many of the tours also will incorporate other parts of the island, and all of the flights offer commentary in multiple languages, I believe 12 in total. One thing to understand and good for you to know is that if you plan for those helicopter flights to happen from Hilo, because you're much closer to Volcano National Park, the cost of those flights is a little lower, and you do get to spend more time over the volcanoes. So definitely worth doing from Hilo if you can plan it that way. All right, so we've had a really wonderful time exploring Volcano National Park, but it's time to move on. And we're going to head across the island again. We're headed towards Kona. And if you remember back to the map, you'll be able to picture that. So our next stop is going to be Punalu'u Black Sand Beach. This is a stunning beach. And as you can see, the sand here is black. The big island of Hawaii has both white and black sand beaches. The black sand, of course, is formed through that volcanic activity. It's the lava that has been broken down and formed into sand. Punalu'u is probably the best of the black sand beaches. It's the most easily accessible. It's a beautiful stroll along the water's edge here, and it's just in a stunning, stunning location. One of the nice things about this beach is that you will often find green turtles who come up onto the beach to enjoy the sun. They like to warm up and bask in the sun. And it's also a fantastic picnic spot. So if you were able to go to the farmers market in Hilo and perhaps you brought something with you, this is a great spot to sit on the beach and enjoy that. One thing that's worth thinking about as you're planning trips for your guests or for your customers, a great way to experience this beach is to have them arrive at one end of the beach and then have the vehicle move to the other end of the beach and allow the guests to walk along. It's less than a mile. It's a very easy walk. They can get their feet in the sand, get the ocean lapping around their toes, and then get back onto the vehicle and continue their journey. Really brings this alive and is a great way to experience the beach. Okay, so we've mentioned Kona quite a lot as we've gone through the presentation here. And finally, we've arrived. So we're in Kailua Kona. You saw that this is where the other of the island's airports is located. This is probably where most guests will arrive into the island. It's home to multiple hotels, from simple 2-diamond up to 4-diamond resort style hotels. Great shopping and dining. This is also where the cruise ships typically will arrive if they're coming into the island. One of the things that is a really fantastic experience here, and something that you can only do in this area, is to view the manta rays. And we'll get into that in just a moment here. So, we can't come to the big island of Hawaii and not talk about coffee. The area around Kona has a unique microclimate that makes it perfect for growing coffee. Has all of the right soil attributes, all of the right climate attributes, and just the right amount of rainfall. And as a result, there are numerous coffee farms located in this corridor of coffee producing farms just around Kona. Kona coffee is famous the world over because of the quality. And there's a number of great ways to really experience some of these coffee farms. So there are simple visits where you can visit the farm shop and you can maybe taste some coffee. That would be the simplest way. But there are a number of really great options where you can get a little deeper. So some involve you learning more about the production cycle of coffee. You get to walk through the coffee bushes. You get to pick the cherry, which is the name of the fruit that contains the coffee bean. You get to harvest some of that and then see how that then will eventually end up as a cup of coffee. And one of the really unique experiences, and something that we like to do with our guests a lot, is to have them learn how to roast coffee. So they'll learn the entire production process, but then they'll get to actually roast their own bean. That's then packaged for them. It can be branded with perhaps their name, the group's name, your customer's name, or your company's name, and then they get to take that home with them as a memento, a souvenir of their visit. It's a fantastic way to experience Kona coffee. So, I mentioned that one of the really unique things that you can do in the Kona area is to swim with the manta rays. So this particular area is home to these beautiful manta rays that you can see here. They are huge, and you can kind of see that from the video that's playing. It's a really unique experience, and it's done very, very well. So what happens is that you join the captain of the boat. He's going to take you out into the ocean, and this is at night. And the reason that it's at night is what the manta rays are doing here is they're coming to feed. What they like to eat is plankton. Plankton are attracted to bright light. And so what happens is that if you shine light into the water, the plankton are going to come to that light, and the manta rays then come to the plankton. The way that the operators here handle this experience, as you can see, is that you get out into the water, and they will have almost like a surfboard that floats in the water, has lights mounted underneath it. You hold on to the side of that surfboard, and you're wearing a snorkel and a mask, and you can then look down into the water and see the manta ray coming. That does two things. Number one, it keeps you safe because you're attached to this very buoyant floating device that is attached to the boat, and so you're nice and safe. But it also means that the manta ray are safe because you're not tempted to touch them, to harm them in any way, and so it's a great way of experiencing these beautiful animals and doing it in a responsible way. I did want to mention that DA has some great relationships with the operators of these experiences, and we've developed a number of unique ways that guests can have this experience, but then can also combine this with a deeper learning experience. So perhaps one of the naturalists will join the group at dinner before they go out and do this, and they'll give them a lot more background on the manta ray, so that when they go into the water, they really understand what they're seeing. All right, so moving on, but more activity on the water. We're headed now to Captain Cook Bay, and it gets this name because this was the spot that Captain James Cook first landed in the Hawaiian Islands back in 1779. As you can see from the picture, it's an absolutely stunning spot. And the best way to experience it is to get into the water and either snorkel in the bay. It's a protected marine park, and so the marine life here is incredible. Or you can kayak as well. And what people typically do when they kayak is that they'll start on one side of the bay. It's about a mile across the bay, so a relatively easy kayak, and it's protected waters. And when you get to the other side, there's a monument to Captain Cook that you can see there. Getting here, you go from Kona, and it's probably a half-day experience to head out to Captain Cook. So it's great being in the ocean, but it's also great to be on the land. And the Big Island gives us lots of opportunities for that too. So we're going to head north of Kona now, and we're going to go up the Kahala coastline. This area of the Big Island is, particularly the area around Waimea, is home to the Paniolo, the Hawaiian cowboy. And a lot of people don't think of cowboys as being part of Hawaii, but they absolutely are. Cattle were introduced to the islands when back in 1739, I believe, when 6 cattle were given as a gift to King Kamehameha. They were allowed to roam free, and now there are over 55,000 head of cattle in the state of Hawaii. Great way to experience this and to learn more about the Hawaiian cowboys and the beef industry in the islands is to go to Parker Ranch, and that's an easy trip from Kona or from Waikoloa. Another great spot when you're on this stretch of coastline, and one not to be missed, is Hapuna Beach Park. This is a white sand beach. So we talked earlier about the black sand beach that's down near Volcano National Park. This is a white sand beach, and this one consistently gets voted into the top 10 beaches in the world. If you're on the islands at the right time of the year, which is the winter period, January through March typically, there is the opportunity to do some whale watching along this stretch of coastline as well, and that's a really wonderful experience. And another great spot on this side of the island is the King Kamehameha statue. This is a statue dedicated to King Kamehameha, and it's a great way to introduce guests to the history of the islands and the Hawaiian culture in a way that's really meaningful to them. So everybody also likes a little adventure, and the best adventure, in my opinion anyway, on the Big Island is to do the Kahala Zipline. So this also is on that same stretch of coastline above Kona. It's a obviously very exhilarating experience, and what's great about the zipline on the Big Island is it's very easy to combine the zipline with some hiking. There are a number of hikes in the area which will take you deeper into the countryside. You're going to get to see native plants, native fruit that's growing, and many of the hikes will end up at a small swimming hole or waterfall, which will allow you to cool off after the zipline as well. There's also a number of really great little towns on the way up to the zipline, and they're a great spot to stop for either lunch or just to allow the guests to do a little bit of shopping. All right, well, it's been fun exploring the island with you, but we do have to think of some of the practicalities now, and hopefully you're ready to come and send your guests to the Big Island as well. So we're going to need to know where they can stay. There's essentially a couple of areas on the island where the hotels are to be located. So we talked about Hilo. There are a number of hotels in Hilo. The one that you see on screen here is the Doubletree, the Grand Naniloa. There's also the Hilo Hawaiian Hotel on the Hilo side, and there's a number of smaller family-owned B&B style hotels. Worth pointing out that Destination America works with all of these hotels. We give them a lot of business over the course of the year, and as a result, we have the best rates that you're going to find. So the other part of the island to stay is, of course, around Kona or in the resort town of Waikoloa, which is just a little higher up the coastline from Kona. And this is where most visitors do choose to stay while on the Big Island. The Waikoloa area is where you're going to find all of the really large international style resorts. Few to mention would be the Marriott or the Hilton Waikoloa Village. The Hilton Waikoloa Village is so large that guests get around it using either a monorail or a boat. In the Kona area, hotels are a little bit smaller. One of our favorites is the Royal Kona Resort. This is right on the ocean, and it's also within walking distance of the town of Kailua Kona, meaning that people can really enjoy all of the dining and the nightlife that happens in the town. And then there's also the Sheraton Keahu Resort. Like with Hilo, DA works with these hotels on a regular basis and can offer you the very best terms. So that brings us to the end of our brief visit to the Big Island of Hawaii. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your time and for joining us. We really do appreciate it. I'm sure there are going to be questions that you have, and either Joyce or Georgia will be able to help you with that, and we look forward to being able to do that. Thank you again, everybody, and aloha.